Students, let us continue with the role of Hindu nationalism or the rise of Hindu nationalism and the British policy of divide and rule. Revolutionary societies like Anushilan Samiti in Bengal and Mitra Mela in Maharashtra drew many young Hindu motivated by patriotism and spiritual discipline. Influenced by leaders like Tilak and Bankim's Anandamath, they interpreted service to the motherland as a religious duty. Anushilan Samiti members such as Aurobindo Ghosh, Jatin Mukherjee and Rash Bihari Bose undertook armed resistance through training, propaganda and sporadic attacks. In Maharashtra, Savarkar's Abhinav Bharat promoted self-sacrifice and military education. These organizations worked secretly under repressive laws but inspired fearless idealism. Religious imagery from Gita and Puranas fostered courage without sectarian hatred. Although their immediate success was limited, their martyrdom stimulated public sympathy and exposed the cruelty of colonial injustice. The network between Bengal and Punjab linked urban intellectuals and rural peasants in a shared revolt. During World War I, their contacts abroad led to the Ghadar conspiracy and Hindu-German plans for uprising. Even Gandhi acknowledged their sacrifice while disagreeing with violence. The revolutionaries' blend of Hindu symbolism, discipline and anti-imperial fervor contributed to the psychological break from fear. They demonstrated that political freedom was worth any price, and their memory nourished later non-violent movements with the same spirit of fearless self-dedication. So religion was used as a tool, as a source to make people fearless, and religion was used to fuse service to the nation with religion, a healthy fusion of religion and nationalism. The partition of Bengal in 1905 provoked the Swadeshi movement, a turning point in Indian nationalism. Hindu leaders and organizations mobilized public anger through economic boycott and indigenous enterprises. Tilak, Lajpat Rai and Bipin Pal urged Indians to discard British goods and wear homespun cloth. Local merchants, guilds and Arya Samaj branches opened national schools, set up handloom industries and organized public bonfires of foreign textiles and foreign goods. Women participated by spinning and picketing shops, bringing domestic virtue into public protest. Moreover, participation of women gives legitimacy to any movement, because it's very rare that women come out on the roads and they join any movement. But when women joins, the movement really becomes legitimate. Students boycotted government colleges to join new national universities. The movement revived faith in India's economic capacity and linked self-reliance with dignity. Though rooted in Bengal, its spirit spread nationwide, forging unity across regions. British repression was severe, but the moral victory was greater. People realized their collective power could challenge an empire. The Swadeshi ethos of production and consumption as patriotic duty anticipated Gandhi's Khadi campaign. For Hindu organizations, it was a means to reclaim economic sovereignty and moral self-respect, making politics a matter of daily practice rather than occasional revolt. By uniting economic action with spiritual resolve, the Swadeshi movement laid the foundation for modern mass mobilization in India. Social reform formed the ethical core of India's freedom movement. Hindu leaders like Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Dayanand Saraswati and later Gandhi argued that self-rule was meaningless without self-purification. Campaigns for widow remarriage, female education, and abolition of untouchability, raising the age of marriage, expanded citizenship within society itself. Legislation such as the Widow Remarriage Act of 1856 and Age of Consent Act 1891 owed much to persistent reform lobbies, of course dominated by Hindu intellectuals. Reform societies held debates, ran schools, and produced vernacular pamphlets explaining ethical foundations of equality. Raja Raman Roy himself uh, denounced sati on the religious grounds, using the Hindu religious mythology of rebirth or the theory of rebirth. According to him, if a woman has committed some sin because of which she is facing widowhood in this birth, instead of burning her alive on the pyre of the husband, it's better to give her life and opportunity to reform and repent her sins so that she does not face the same kind of punishment in her next birth. So this is how religion was used to bring about social reforms. By eroding orthodox control, they prepared minds for democracy. Gokhale and Malviya pushed for compulsory education in legislatures, while the Ramakrishna Mission and Arya Samaj opened institutions for women and depressed castes. These initiatives challenged colonial claim that Indians were socially backward and unfit for freedom. Reformers linked ethics to patriotism, arguing that a nation divided by injustice could not stand united against imperialism. Their work also influenced law students and civil servants who carried liberal values into administration. Through conscious moral awakening, these Hindu reformers turned religion into a force for progress and helped build a social foundation for political emancipation. From its foundation in 1885, the Indian National Congress included many prominent leaders whose ideas shaped its strategy and ethos. Moderates like Dadabhai Naoroji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, and M.G. Ranade emphasized constitutional methods and economic critique, while extremists such as Tilak and Lajpat Rai pushed for mass mobilization and boycott. Despite differences, all viewed freedom as a moral obligation. Hindu ethics of self-discipline and non-injury influenced Congress culture and the entire national movement even before the arrival of Gandhi on the political scene. Annual sessions opened with prayers invoking unity of all faiths, reflecting spiritual cosmopolitanism. Leaders used Hindu symbols like charkha and Mother Goddess to stir emotion without excluding other communities. Within Congress, debates on social reform, education, and labor legislation were largely initiated by Hindu intellectuals who were influenced by the reform movements. They helped transform a petitioning body into a mass organization by creating volunteer corps and regional committees. Their administrative discipline and fundraising through temple and guilds networks gave Congress a grassroots presence. Thus, Hindu leaders within Congress ensured that nationalism retained an ethical and inclusive character, balancing modern politics with traditional values and making the party the broadest vehicle for India's freedom. Temples and religious associations functioned as centers of social communication in colonial India, providing organizational basis for political activity. In many towns, priests and local notables used temple courtyards to hold public meetings, distribute pamphlets, and collect relief funds. During the Swadeshi and non-cooperation movements, temple festivals became occasions for boycott pledges and volunteer recruitments. Associations like the Arya Pratinidhi Sabha and Hindu Sabha organized charitable meals, reading rooms, and night schools for workers and such activities linked religious virtues with public service. In South India, temple entry movements under leaders like Srinivasa Iyengar and later Gandhi turned ritual space into an area of equality. By breaking barriers of caste and gender within worship, activists demonstrated the social content of freedom. These networks also facilitated relief during famines and floods, earning popular trust and political parties that it these networks also facilitated relief during famines and floods, earning popular trust that political parties alone lacked. The fusion of devotion and civic action gave nationalism emotional depth and moral authority. Temples thus served as people's parliaments where colonial restrictions on assembly could be circumvented. Their role illustrates how India's freedom struggle drew strengths from indigenous institutions that combined faith with grassroots organizations. Education and print media were powerful weapons in the hands of Hindu reformers and leaders. They founded schools and colleges to promote vernacular learning and civic responsibilities. Institutions such as Banaras Hindu University, DAV colleges and Fergusson College trained thousands who later joined the freedom movement. Journalists like Tilak, Pal and Malviya used papers such as Kesari, Bande Mataram and Leader to expose economic exploitation and rally opinion. Editorials discussed Swadeshi, gender rights and political representation, creating a nationwide political consciousness. Religious periodicals translated patriotic songs and spiritual texts to reach the semi-literate population. Education was viewed as liberation from ignorance imposed by both orthodoxy and colonial rule. By combining moral and scientific instruction, these institutions built disciplined cadres for self-government. The nationalist press bridged regional divides, spreading news of protest and British repression within hours. Censorship laws could not suppress its influence. Reading circles and school debates nurtured analytical thinking essential for democracy. Together, education and journalism transformed India's intellectual climate from passive acceptance to questioning authority. They embodied the belief that ideas, not arms, would ultimately secure India's independence. Several Hindu reformers blurred the line between moral awakening and political action, demonstrating that ethics could serve as a strategy. Gokhale's Servants of India Society trained disciplined citizens. Vivekananda's Ramakrishna Mission taught service as worship, and Dayanand's Arya Samaj fused reform with patriotism. Later, Gandhi synthesized these traditions into his doctrine of Satyagraha. By insisting that politics without morality was corruption, these leaders changed the tone of public life. They held that truth and non-violence were forms of strength, not weakness. Their emphasis on simplicity, education, and labor dignity appealed to both elites and villagers. Many refused official honors and lived modesty to set examples. Such leadership turned freedom into an ethical experiment, not merely a power contest. Their social work, like hospitals, schools, ashmas, demonstrated governance by service. Even opponents respected their moral authority. Through this fusion, Hindu reformers legitimized politics as a moral duty, ensuring that independence would aim at justice, not revenge. Their integration of dharma and democracy gave Indian nationalism its distinctive moral vocabulary, distinguishing it from purely secular or militaristic movements elsewhere. As India's struggle for independence matured, Hindu organizations evolved from small reform circles into large platforms of national service and cultural renewal. Their guiding aim was unity, social, moral and spiritual, so that the nation could face the challenges of self-rule with discipline and confidence. Groups such as Arya Samaj, Hindu Mahasabha and Ramakrishna Mission promoted education, cottage industries and civic cooperation, proving that faith could energize social progress. Campaigns for cow protection, literacy and temperance encouraged community solidarity and, of course, moral restraint. Leaders emphasized harmony among all Indians, teaching that religion should inspire compassion, not division. Through youth camps, relief work and women's associations, these organizations strengthened social bonds fractured by poverty and colonial policies. Their journals and lectures spread awareness of hygiene, thrift and national pride. Even when working within limited political space, they focused on self-improvement rather than confrontation, creating a disciplined citizenry capable of democracy. The revival of indigenous arts, crafts and languages fostered cultural continuity alongside modern education. By integrating ethical instructions with practical service, Hindu organizations became nurseries of leadership and civic virtues. Their enduring message was that India's strength lay in unity, tolerance and fearless service. This constructive spirit transformed religious devotion into collective patriotism, ensuring that cultural awakening advanced hand in hand with political freedom. Hindu leaders during the freedom struggle often practiced pragmatic cooperation to achieve gradual reform within the constraints of colonial rule. Their engagements with the British institutions was not submission but a conscious strategy to learn administrative methods, secure representation and protect Indian interests. Reformers like Gokhale, Ranade and Malviya believed that negotiation and education would prepare India for responsible self-government. By joining legislative councils and reform committees, they presented detailed critiques of colonial policy and secured progressive laws on education, sanitation and industry. This phase created a trained class of Indian administrators who later staffed independent India's bureaucracy. Their moderation prevented reckless confrontation and preserved space for political debate. Even as they cooperated, they inspired trust among the masses through personal sacrifice and integrity. Their loyalty was to India's welfare, not to imperial authority. The combination of patient reform, institutional building and moral example demonstrated that patriotism could take many forms, some dramatic, others quietly transformative. These pragmatic nationalists laid the foundations of stable governance, proving that constructive participation could be a weapon as potent as protest. Their vision of disciplined self-rule helped bridge colonial institutions and independent democracy, ensuring continuity in the moral and administrative fabric of the new nation. Revolutionary activity among Hindu youth reflected the moral energy that reform movements had generated. Inspired by heroes like Tilak, Savarkar and Khudiram Bose, they viewed sacrifice for the nation as a sacred duty. Secret societies such as Anushilan Samiti and Abhinav Bharat combined spiritual discipline with rigorous training in self-reliance and courage. Though some resorted to violence, their underlying goal was the liberation of India and the restoration of human dignity. These patriots displayed immense courage under repression. Their trials and martyrdom awakened conscience across the country. Newspapers celebrated their bravery, inspiring students to renounce comfort for public service. Their appeal crossed regional and religious lines, showing that youthful idealism transcended divisions. Even Gandhi acknowledged that their spirit of fearlessness enriched the moral climate of nationalism. The revolutionaries' songs, literature, and underground schools instilled self-confidence in generations that had known only submission. By proving that Indians could face death for a cause, they dispelled the myth of colonial superiority. Their devotion embodied the highest Hindu ideals of dharma and self sacrifice. Although their methods differed from non-violence, their inspiration and integrity strengthened India's collective resolve, making them immortal symbols of courage in the nation's spiritual and political journey towards freedom. The period of the two world wars tested the capacity of Hindu organizations to balance patriotism with public responsibility. While political agitation faced severe restrictions, many groups turned their energy towards humanitarian service. The Hindu Mahasabha, the Arya Samaj, and the Ramakrishna Mission organized famine relief, refugee rehabilitation, and medical aid for soldiers and civilians. Students from DAV colleges and BHU volunteered in hospitals, demonstrating discipline and national unity. Leaders like Savarkar and Malviya emphasized industrial development, education, and social harmony to prepare India for self-government after the wars. Even organizations that stayed outside direct politics strengthened morale through civic training, youth camps, and charity. These programs nurtured leadership and administrative skills that became vital after independence. The cultural nationalism of Hindu organizations evolved into a unifying moral vision that transcended sectarian boundaries. Drawing inspiration from ancient ideals of harmony, reformers and leaders promoted tolerance and social justice and respect for all faiths. Thinkers like Vivekanand, Malviya, and Gandhi taught that India's strength lay in its spiritual inclusiveness, not in division. Educational institutions, temples, and societies uh, became centers for dialogue, music, and literature, celebrating common heritage. Movements for women empowerment, rural upliftment, and community education cut across caste lines and created a sense of shared destiny. Even during difficult negotiations before independence, Hindu leaders advocated fraternity and reconciliation. They saw independence not merely as the transfer of power but as a moral rebirth of civilization. Festivals and social gatherings spread the message that love for our motherland meant service to humanity. Cultural revival gave millions pride in their language, art, and philosophy, encouraging creative expression in literature and theatre. This positive nationalism inspired cooperative action and mutual respect amongst diverse communities. When freedom finally came in 1947, it carried the ethical imprint of these ideals. The enduring legacy of cultural nationalism was the belief that India could modernize while preserving compassion, unity, and spiritual purpose. The contribution of Hindu organizations and leaders to India's freedom and nation building remains profound and enduring. They transformed spirituality into social energy, teaching that patriotism was a sacred duty rooted in dharma. From the reformist zeal of the Brahmo Samaj and Arya Samaj to the universalism of the Ramakrishna Mission and the civic discipline of the servants of India society, their collective work laid the moral foundations of democracy. Tilak, Vivekanand, Gokhale, Malviya, and countless others instilled courage, education, and ethical leadership in a colonized society. Their schools, newspapers, and voluntary organizations fostered literacy, economic self-reliance, and civic pride. They bridged ancient wisdom with modern nationality, proving that faith and reason could cooperate in public life. The ideals of seva, selfless service became the heart of India's civic culture, visible in relief work, cooperative movements, and Gandhian constructive programs even after independence. Their influence shaped India's constitution, educational policy, and ethos of tolerance. They demonstrated that national freedom was meaningful only when it uplifted every section of society. Ideals of seva, selfless service, became the heart of India's civic culture, visible in relief work, cooperative movements, and Gandhian constructive program. Even after independence, their influence shaped India's constitution, educational policy, and ethos of tolerance. They demonstrated that national freedom was meaningful only when it uplifted every section of society. It goes very well with the agenda of the today's government also, when it says sabka saath sabka vikas. When the present government is focusing on the development of and upliftment of every section, we can see the revival of the same ideal in the modern India or the contemporary India. The story of Hindu organization is thus the story of creative nation building through compassion, courage, and conviction. Their legacy continues to remind modern India that true greatness lies not in power but in service of truth and humanity. As we conclude this discussion, it becomes clear that Hindu organizations and leaders played a remarkable role in transforming India's moral and political landscape. Their contribution went far beyond religious reform or just religious revivalism or revival of our connection to the Sanatan roots. They gave India the courage to believe in herself. Through movements like Brahmo Samaj, Arya Samaj, and Ramakrishna Mission, Indians rediscovered dignity, equality, and services as living ideals. Leaders such as Gokhale, Tilak, Lajpat Rai, and Vivekanand reminded people that freedom was not merely a political goal but a sacred responsibility requiring character, discipline, and sacrifice. They built schools, promoted women's education, and inspired economic self-reliance, laying the ethical foundation for democracy. The devotion to truth, unity, and selfless service shaped the very soul of the freedom movement. The social harmony they envisioned continues to guide India's pluralism today. Every reform they initiated, whether in education, faith, or civic life, was rooted in love for humanity and respect for diversity. Their combined legacy shows that religion, when purified of fear and prejudice, can become a source of strength for social progress. By linking spiritual awakening with political freedom, they turned the struggle for independence into a moral and civilizational renaissance. Their message still echoes in modern India that the truest form of patriotism is service and the highest duty of citizenship is compassion. Thank you.